What if Ahsoka and Vader's duel in Star Wars Rebels episode Twilight of the Apprentice led to Vader's redemption and the return of Anakin Skywalker? Darth Vader had long forgotten his former self as Anakin Skywalker. The atrocities he had committed in service to the Emperor weighed heavily on him, but he had resigned himself to a life of darkness. That is, until he encountered a young Jedi named Ahsoka Tano. Despite being a former apprentice of his previous self, Vader didn't remember her. He remembered very little of his days as Anakin Skywalker, as it had been many years since then. They fought fiercely against each other, but Ahsoka never gave up on trying to bring Anakin back to the light. It was a long and difficult battle, but slowly but surely Anakin began to remember his former life as their lightsabers clashed together. He slowly remembered the love he had for his wife Padme, the bond he had with his former master Obi-Wan, the joy he had found in being a Jedi, and his desire to teach that to his apprentice. He truly did want to live a life of compassion and happiness, but fear of loss stole that from him. Finally, Anakin made the decision to renounce the dark side and return to the light. Ahsoka was successful in bringing her former master back from the darkness. Vader was no more, and Anakin had returned. She could see it in his eyes as the yellow hue faded and the caring eyes of her former master returned. He returned to Tatooine, where he was met by a reluctant Obi-Wan. The two stare eye to eye, with Obi-Wan ready for battle. Ahsoka reassures Obi-Wan that he is no longer Vader as he removes the top half of his helmet. Obi-Wan notices immediately that Anakin's eyes are back, and therefore so is he. Anakin makes a quip about the sun's not being very kind to him and how old he looks in just a few short years. This spurs a nice little moment of laughter and joy between the three of them, reminiscent of their days in the Clone Wars. Some may be surprised at the speed in which Obi-Wan embraces his old friend and Padawan, but they were always more than that. Obi-Wan was just glad that he could have his brother back. Obi-Wan returns Anakin's blue saber to him, and to everyone's surprise, Anakin is able to fashion a new saber with a blade the color of purple, a symbol of the balance he had finally achieved using pieces of both Anakin and Vader's sabers. He shed what he could of his former self in an effort to show everyone that Vader was no more. But unfortunately, it was Vader's cybernetics and armor that kept him alive. So he could no longer stay alive without some pieces of Vader remaining. He no longer covered his entire head, only what was necessary to breathe. He wore Jedi robes over top his cybernetic body and limbs, and painted what he could of his black armor a new shiny white, reminiscent of his attire during the Clone Wars. With Ahsoka's help, Anakin made amends for his past actions and knew he wanted to begin work to restore the Jedi Order. But the path ahead was not without its challenges. The Emperor, Darth Sidious, who had once been Anakin's mentor, saw his former apprentice's change of heart as a threat. He, along with his enforcers and new apprentice Maul, went to Tatooine in an attempt to capture Anakin and bring him back to the dark side. Maul had tried to escape Malachor after Vader's redemption, but was captured. Even though he had grown to be opposed to the Empire, he also knew that this was his best chance to be spared and return to his once rightful spot as leader of the galaxy, and would do anything to stay alive to try and fulfill his goals, even if that meant going back to and working under the man who had tried to kill and replace him multiple times. Anakin was no longer the same man he had been before. With his newfound connection to the Force, he was able to defend himself against the Emperor's attacks. The battle between Anakin and the Emperor was fierce, but in the end, Anakin emerged victorious. The Emperor was defeated, and his hold over the galaxy was broken, but only if Maul could also be defeated. And Maul put up a good fight against Obi-Wan, but reverted back to his old ways, and Obi-Wan was a wiser man than the last time they fought. Obi-Wan quickly kills Maul, and with that, peace was restored. Now that the galaxy was in a mostly peaceful state, Anakin set about rebuilding the Jedi Order. It was a difficult task, but Anakin found purpose in being a teacher and mentor to the next generation of Jedi, starting with his own children. Anakin was filled with regret for the years that he had spent away from his children, but he vowed to make up for lost time. He reached out to them, wanting to know them and to form a bond with them. It was not an easy journey, but Luke and Leia eventually came to accept their father and welcomed him into their lives. Luke, who over the years, under his and Ahsoka's training, had become a powerful Jedi in his own right, worked alongside Anakin to restore the Jedi Order. And together, the three of them, along with Leia, for years to come, worked to ensure that the galaxy remained safe and just. They were a powerful team, with Anakin bringing his knowledge and experience, Luke bringing his skills as a Jedi, and Leia bringing her leadership and strategic mind. Ahsoka's experience and knowledge became an invaluable asset to the new Jedi Order. She was able to help teach the next generation of Jedi in a way that was both compassionate and practical, instilling in them the values of the Jedi without falling into the same rigid dogma that had led to the Order's downfall. As time went on, Ahsoka's role in the Jedi Order evolved. She became one of Anakin's most trusted advisors and often worked alongside him and his children to bring peace and justice to the galaxy. Her wisdom and insight helped shape the Order into one that was more inclusive, compassionate, and effective. Growing in age, Anakin looked upon his newfound family, knowing that he had been given a second chance thanks to Ahsoka. He had been able to make amends for his mistakes and to build a relationship with his children that he had never thought possible. And as he saw them work together to create a better future for the galaxy, and though he never forgot the mistakes he made, he knew that he had truly fulfilled his destiny as the chosen one. Even after Anakin's passing, Ahsoka and his children continued to carry on his legacy. She became a mentor and leader to many Jedi, passing on the teachings that Anakin had entrusted to her. And as she looked upon the new generation of Jedi, Ahsoka knew that Anakin's legacy would live on through them as well as his children. Do you think that this would be a good trilogy or even more than that of movies? Because, like, technically, this would start to take place right in that Star Wars Rebels episode, which is even before A New Hope. So the start of the story is about when Luke and Leia are about somewhere between the ages of 5 and 10, because I think this would technically take place even before the Obi-Wan series. I could be wrong, it might be after, but just off the top of my head, I think it would take place even before that. So they would be a little younger or around the same age as they are in the Obi-Wan series, which is, I believe, about around 10 years old. So Vader would only exist for those 10 years. But even in those 10 years, he had done quite a bit of damage and wiped out most of the Jedi along with the Inquisitors. So if he's redeemed during that episode, during that fight with Ahsoka, that would change the entire original trilogy and sequel trilogy, because all of the conflicts of Luke against his father and the Emperor would not have taken place. And then because of that, Rey would not exist because the Emperor would not have needed to clone himself and create Snoke and all of that stuff that took place in the sequel trilogy. So it would be a completely different Star Wars universe. But I think it could still be interesting. I don't know if they would be able to make that many movies about that type of storyline, just because with the Emperor and Maul being wiped out even before those take place, there's really not much conflict. I mean, of course, they could create new characters, new conflicts, and not just stick to the ones that we know as established. But I think it would be difficult just because there's no base for them to start from. Like Kylo Ren was created because he is the child of Han Solo and Leia. But if Vader was in Leia's life from 10, who says she even meets Han to even have Kylo? So I mean, they would need completely different villains because I don't think it would be very easy to make so many movies without very much conflict. I mean, it would be peaceful, but movies about a peaceful galaxy are sure not going to have as much impact and popularity as something with conflict worth fighting for, some for reasons for something to happen. So it would maybe be much smaller villains, like quantity over quality, or they would just have to create new ones. I mean, the Inquisitors are still out there, so that's a possibility. But I don't think they would be able to put up much of a fight against Anakin, Ahsoka, and Luke, especially if they were always together. And Obi-Wan. I mean, even an aged Obi-Wan is still powerful. I mean, because he's not getting killed by Vader. So he would, assuming, I mean, obviously, like I said, it would be all up to them, but assuming he just dies with old age, that still gives him quite a few years to fight alongside them if necessary. And Yoda would still be alive, so I really don't see many conflicts arising that could really challenge them sticking together. So this has been kind of a longer what if, and hopefully something that you guys enjoyed and want to see more of in this style. So thank you. Please like, comment, and subscribe to keep the content coming, and I'll see you again soon.